I'm Alisa, 30 years old. That day was my parents' golden wedding anniversary, a grand celebration held at the most luxurious hotel in the city, with over 200 guests and a live orchestra. I stepped out of the car, wearing the black dress my mother once praised as elegant, like a Wall Street lady. In my hand was a carefully wrapped gift box. In my purse, a copy of the invitation and the transfer receipt for $26,000, the quiet sponsorship I had sent 3 weeks earlier. I arrived right on time. But when I reached the front desk, the receptionist flipped through the list, checked it again, then looked up and said gently, like a blade slicing through skin, "I'm sorry, your name isn't on the guest list." I froze. That can't be. I'm the daughter of the hosts. She hesitated, then turned to make a call. A minute later, my parents appeared from the grand hall, radiant in the spotlight, gold dress and tailored suit, and faces cold as stone. My mother frowned. "What are you doing here?" I struggled to find my words. "I sent money to help fund this party." My father cut me off bluntly. "Money is one thing, but this is a family event and you've long stopped being part of this family." The world went silent. In the next moment, I heard my father say to a nearby security guard, "Escort her out. She's here to cause trouble." The guard's hand touched my arm like I was a stranger. I didn't resist. I didn't cry. I just quietly turned and walked away from a celebration where I should have been welcomed. Once in the car, I pulled out my phone, logged into my bank account, and within 3 minutes revoked everything. I froze my mother's supplementary credit card, shut down my father's real estate investment fund, and recalled my brother's MBA loan. Total: $340,000. No warning, no apology. No more chances to be treated like an outsider in my own family. Have you ever felt invisible in the eyes of your own parents? Tell me where you're watching from, because I'd love to know if someone else out there carries a story like mine. I was born and raised in a picture-perfect suburb where every house had a manicured front lawn, the American flag hung proudly, and lawnmowers hummed every weekend like a ritual. My family, at least on social media, looked flawless. My father, Richard, worked in real estate and loved posting photos of wine glasses by the pool with captions like, "Family is everything." My mother, Carol, managed a luxury spa, always dressed to the nines, and had a habit of posting Sunday brunch with the fam pictures, tagging every cousin in sight. My younger brother, Andrew, was the golden child. Handsome, lively, and always knew how to make people smile. They called him the pride of the Miller family. And me? I was the eldest daughter, once held to high expectations, until I began thinking for myself. I left home at 17 with a full scholarship to the University of Chicago. The night before I left, all I wanted was a warm dinner, a hug. Instead, I got a fight. I had asked about a loan taken out in my name to expand my mom's spa, something I didn't know about until the school flagged my student loan file. My dad erupted. My mom cried. And I was called ungrateful. 9. Since then, I rarely went home. While I lived in a tiny dorm, juggling studies and part-time cafe shifts, Andrew was sent to an art school in New York. Tuition: $48,000 a year, plus rent, allowances, monthly flights. When I called my mom to ask how they could afford all that, she chuckled softly. "He's a boy. He needs space to grow." And me? I was told, "You're strong, you'll figure it out." In all 3 years of college, not once did my parents show up for any ceremony, not for freshman orientation, not for graduation, not even with a single bouquet. The only time I ever invited them, my mother replied with just one message: "Your brother has a jazz band performance at the park. We have to support him." That message came right as I was putting on my cap and gown, standing in the middle of campus with my diploma in hand. I grew used to being left out. Every holiday, they still took family reunion photos featuring Andrew, my parents, aunts, uncles, and a few of his friends. There was never an empty seat left for me. At first, I would still comment kindly, "Looks great, miss you guys." No one replied. Eventually, I stopped writing. Bit by bit, I became a shadow the sister only mentioned when it was time to send money. When Andrew turned 23, my parents threw him a huge outdoor birthday party, complete with a live band and food trucks. I found out from one of my mom's Instagram posts, captioned, "Our golden boy deserves nothing less." I messaged her privately, asking, was I not invited? She left me on scene. No reply. Just a few months later, she called me in the middle of the night, sobbing because my dad had been in a car accident and the hospital bill was over $20,000. I sent the money immediately without a second thought. Even though I wasn't invited, wasn't acknowledged, I still thought, they're my family. Maybe one day, it'll be different. That's how I kept comforting myself for 10 years. Every time I went home, when I did, I was the one cleaning the kitchen, clearing the table, watching the house while they went on weekend trips. Meanwhile, Andrew would show off his new paintings, earning endless praise. Once, I overheard my mother telling guests, "My daughter lives in Chicago, but she's too busy to visit. Her brother's the one who really stays close." I gave a quiet smile. The daughter who had paid to fix the roof, replace the water heater, cover her brother's tuition was labeled as busy. Nothing more. I never needed to be celebrated, but I did hope at the very least to be included in the family portrait they loved posting online. A single photo, a hug. A real glance that looked at me, not through me, like I was the help. But that never happened. I don't know when exactly I started being seen as a walking wallet. Maybe it was the first time my mom called to borrow $3,000 for her emergency surgery after an accident. That day, I was at the office, preparing to present my first pitch deck to an investment board. The phone rang. Her voice was weak, tearful. "The doctor says it's urgent. I know you're busy, but if you could, help me?" I didn't ask questions. I just wired the money. Less than 5 minutes later, she texted again. "Thank you. Oh, and don't tell your father. He worries too much." No good luck for my big presentation. No. Asking how it went, I told myself, at least I could still help. The following year, my dad called. "Alisa, Andrew just got accepted into a design school in LA, but his car broke down. Could you help get him a used one?" I hesitated. But after seeing the photo my brother posted with his old Corolla captioned, "Thank you, universe," I felt at peace again. I wasn't in that thank you, but at least my brother could get to class on time. And just like that, one expense after another. $1,500 to replace the leaky roof that winter. $6,000 so my dad could expand the garden and boost the property's value. $12,000 for Andrew's wedding, where I was seated at the back table next to distant relatives I couldn't even name. And the only time I ever said no was when my mother asked me to co-sign a loan so they could buy a vacation home in Florida. I gently replied, "I'm sorry, I can't put my name on that debt." They didn't speak to me for 2 days. On the third, my mother sent a short message. "It's disappointing that you don't want to help the family." I had grown used to arriving home with no one greeting me. I'd walk in, the television still blaring, my mother not looking up from her iPad, my father flipping through his newspaper, and Andrew always busy entertaining friends. Once, I walked in with my suitcase and my mother glanced up briefly. "Oh, you're home? Do you need to stay overnight?" I froze at the question. The house I grew up in, the room I once decorated with books and childhood photos, now felt like a temporary guest space. There's one evening I will never forget. My father's birthday. My mother invited nearly 30 people over for a backyard BBQ. I came early and prepared his favorite mashed potatoes, the same kind I used to make for him when I was a child. While I was arranging dishes in the kitchen, my mom called out, "Alisa, can you grab my phone and take a picture of the whole family?" I took the phone, framed the shot, and snapped a few. When I finished, I asked, "Is that good, Mom? Can I go eat now?" She smiled, "Yes, perfect. Thank you, sweetie." I turned toward the table. There were no seats left. No one offered. I sat on the porch steps, ate in silence, and watched the entire family laugh in front of the camera. That photo went up that same evening with the caption, "Family where love begins and never ends." I wasn't in it, I was the one holding the camera. I never demanded anything. Never expected to be praised. But there were moments when the weight of unfairness pierced through my chest. One Christmas evening, as I helped my mother clear the dishes, Andrew walked in holding a brand new pair of headphones. "Mom, these are the ones I bought, right?" She lit up. "Oh my God, yes. Totally your style. Put them on, let me see." I stood by the sink, hands still wet with soap, and quietly asked, "Mom, did you see the scarf I gave you?" She flinched. "Oh, that was from you? I must have put it somewhere." Gradually, I became a silent shadow in that house. A shadow that made money, paid off debts, handled problems but had no voice, no place. Words pierced like needles from the people who were supposed to protect me. A daughter will eventually marry out. Any money spent on her is money spent on someone else's household. You should be grateful. Every family has roles, yours is to support. Sandberg. And I wondered, since when did fulfilling my duty mean I had to endure emotional neglect? Since when did love become a formula where the more you give, the less you're valued? One evening, after urgently wiring money to my mother because she'd lost her wallet at the market, I looked at my personal finance summary. In just 1 year, I had sent over $62,000 to my family. And I couldn't recall a single time they'd called just to ask, "How are you?" I sat in silence in my small apartment. It was raining outside. And in that moment, I didn't feel angry anymore, I just felt invisible. It was a Friday afternoon in early spring, the kind of sunlight that's gentle enough to soothe the exhaustion of a long work week. I stood before the glass windows on the 18th floor, watching the traffic snake its way through the city below, holding a sign printed with the logo of my new company, the baby I had built with 2 friends over the past 3 years. The launch of Elevate Finance, a financial education platform for low-income youth, was the biggest milestone of my life up to that point. Everything, from the presentation slides to the wine glasses, I had prepared with all the pride and hope in the world. I had sent an e-invitation to my parents 2 weeks before, along with a message, "I know there were misunderstandings in the past, but if you can, I really hope you'll come to the launch. Just seeing you in the audience would mean everything." They didn't respond. 3 days before the event, I received a message from my mother. It wasn't about the invitation. It was a short, emotionless sentence, as if nothing else in the world could matter more. "Remember to transfer Andrew's tuition for this semester. MBA is expensive, you know." No question about the company. No good luck. No sign they even knew I was about to step on stage and introduce my very first product to nearly 200 investors and media professionals. That night, I didn't cry. I simply closed the message and went back to rehearsing my pitch with my team. But somewhere deep inside, I felt something beginning to crack, a very small fracture, but a certain one. On the day of the launch, I wore the navy blue suit my mother once said looked best on me. I stepped onto the stage under the dazzling lights and told the story of why I started this project, how I had gone through school with no help, how I had to manage loans on my own, how I skipped meals just to afford textbooks. I spoke from the heart, and when I finished, the room erupted in applause. My teammates had tears in their eyes. An investor came forward, shook my hand, and said, "You've inspired all of us." I looked out at the audience. No one with the last name Miller was there. I thought maybe it was time to let go of hope. But then, a week later, my mother called. Her voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Alisa, your father and I are thinking of throwing a 50th wedding anniversary party. The golden one, you know. But the budget's a little tight." She paused, then added, "I don't want to cut back on the evening reception. You know your dad likes things to be grand." I didn't respond right away. My mind froze. No one had asked how the launch went. No one mentioned the photo I posted with the caption, "Thank you to myself for not giving up." But still I said yes, I agreed. 3 days later, I transferred $26,000, a sum enough to book a luxury wedding hall, a live orchestra, catering, and decorations under the theme, Golden Love. In the memo line, I wrote, "Wishing you a joyful anniversary celebration." From your daughter Alisa. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the faint hope that this time they would remember. That they would invite me properly. That they would call and ask where I'd like to sit, what I'd be wearing, or even just one simple question. Will you be coming? But like every time before, once the transaction was completed, only one thing followed. Silence. And still, I kept telling myself, maybe this time will be different. What I didn't know was that this would be the last time I held on to hope. I sat quietly in my car, not yet starting the engine. The soft golden light from the hotel's grand entrance reflected off the windshield, casting a hollow glow across my face. Outside, music still floated through the air from the party I had just been thrown out of. No apology, no recognition, no shame. My hands trembled slightly, not from anger, but from that numb, final feeling when a relationship, however fractured for years, gets crushed for good. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. Logged into the company's internal finance system. Every step was muscle memory, only this time, it wasn't for anyone else, it was for me. First item, transfer support for event organization, golden anniversary. Choose 6, null. I clicked, revoke funding. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to recall this transaction? I typed. Yes. Code 0319A. Second item. Financial guarantee for Andrew Miller's private residence. Santa Clara property. Original loan, $74,000, guaranteed through Elevate Social Capital, a fund under my supervision. I submitted a request to the bank partner to revoke the financial guarantee, with the stated reason: beneficiary no longer meets the ethical standards required by the guarantor. I switched to my personal banking app. There it was, the supplementary account I had opened for my mother, meant for emergency expenses. A credit card with a $15,000 limit, which she always kept dangerously close to maxed out. I didn't say a word, I simply selected close account and revoked her access. Almost instantly, the system confirmed success. I stared at the words account closed and felt nothing except relief. But I wasn't done yet. I called my attorney, Mr. Carl Benson, who had worked beside me for the past 2 years as I built my community support funds. Carl, I'd like to immediately terminate the sponsorship agreement for the Miller Retirement Trust. He sounded a little surprised, but didn't press. I'll prepare the dissolution documents. The current fund total is around $190,000. Do you want to reallocate it into the Elevate Foundation? My voice was calm. Number. Leave it. Shut it down, no reinvestment. Carl was silent for a few seconds, then simply said, understood, I'll handle it right away. I ended the call and leaned my head back against the car seat. No music. No honking traffic, no tears on my face. Just a stillness in my chest, as if, after 10 years stretched thin by expectations and disappointment, something had finally snapped. Total. Over $340,000. Not cutting ties, just returning it. Every dollar. Every piece. I didn't do it out of anger. If I had wanted revenge, I would have done it years ago. But what I needed tonight wasn't victory, it was freedom. I couldn't keep moving forward while still being tethered to the role of the responsible daughter, especially when all I ever got in return was a seatless celebration. I had tried. I had stayed silent. I had hoped. But hope, when only held by one person, eventually turns into chains. And tonight, I took the chains off myself. No screaming, no rebellion, just a few clicks and a heart steady enough to say, enough. I'll buy. Not 10 minutes after I pressed the final command, my phone began to vibrate nonstop. I set it aside on the passenger seat, deliberately not picking it up. But the screen kept lighting up, dimming, lighting up again like a tiny storm pulsing in my palm. When the missed calls hit 15, I just smiled faintly. I knew I had struck the nerve. When it crossed 40, I switched the phone to silent. At the 56th call, I finally picked it up, not to answer, but to see clearly who was panicking at the sound of my silence. Missed calls. Mom, 12. Dad, 9. Andrew, Enoch 2. Uncle Hank. 2. Unknown numbers, probably the event venue. 3. And many more without names. None worth opening. The first text came from Mom. What's going on with my card? It got declined, I'm standing here at checkout. The second, from Dad. The bank says your brother can't access the funds for his house. The guarantee's been revoked? What are you doing? The third, from Andrew. Tell me what the hell is going on. Did you freeze my account? And then, the final message. Urgent. Sharp. We need to talk, now. I didn't respond to any of them. I simply sent a symbol to each. No explanation, no questions, no justification. Because honestly, what do I owe them? On the way home, I stopped at a small shop, picked up a bottle of red wine and a warm loaf of garlic butter bread. I didn't rush. Outside, a light rain had started falling, the droplets tapping softly on the windshield like the quiet rhythm of something that had just ended and something else that was just beginning. I got back to my small apartment in Austin around 8 p.m. The streetlights had just come on, casting a soft amber glow across the wet sidewalk. I kicked off my shoes, turned on the lights, took off my coat, and set the wine on the table when the doorbell rang. 3 knocks. Firm, fast, demanding. I stood still for a few seconds. I could already guess who it was. I opened the door. Andrew. My younger brother stood there, soaked in rain, shirt clinging to his chest, his eyes burning with anger more than I'd ever seen. He was breathing hard, trying to stay composed, but I could see it clearly, that panic creeping into every breath. What the hell did you do, Alisa? I tilted my head slightly and gestured. Come inside, no point standing in the rain. I'm not coming in. I need an explanation. Andrew stared at me, unblinking. I'm in the middle of closing on a house. The bank just told me the guarantee's been pulled. The account's frozen. Mom's card got declined. Dad is losing it. What are you trying to do? I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, calm. What do you think? You know everything in this family runs because of you. Why would you shut it all down in one night? Because I'm not this family's bank, I said, without raising my voice. And I'm definitely not an unpaid servant for a household that's treated me like an outsider my entire life. Andrew froze. For a second, then let out a sharp laugh. So this is it? You launch a startup, get a bit of fame, and now you're here to teach us all a lesson? I didn't react, just looked at him, steady and quiet, like I was staring at a stranger. You don't get it, Alisa. Family means being tied to each other. It means responsibility. You walk away from that now, and you'll regret it later. I looked at him, not angry, not hurt. Just sad. A deep, hollow sadness for someone who once was my little brother. No, Andrew. I'm not walking away from anyone. I'm just done being a shadow that serves people who don't see me as one of them. If responsibility only runs in one direction, it's not family. It's exploitation. Andrew swallowed hard. So you think just because you've got money, that gives you the right to judge us? I exhaled and shook my head. Money doesn't give me that right, but it is my money. And I do have the right to stop pouring it into a bottomless pit where even basic gratitude doesn't exist. He didn't respond, his face was pale with anger. After a moment, he turned away, standing still under the porch as the rain continued to fall. Then he looked back one last time, his voice lower now. Mom and Dad. They didn't mean to hurt you. I nodded slightly. I know. But they also didn't mean to love me. I gently closed the door. Behind it, I stood in the soft yellow light. The wine bottle was still there. The bread was still warm. I stood there for a while, hands still resting at my sides. Then I turned, walked back, and cracked the door open just a bit. Andrew was still standing outside, back turned, his shoulders rising and falling with every breath. The storm inside him had settled into silence, and it was that silence that made me decide. Come in, I said, my voice quiet as wind brushing across the steps. Andrew turned around, startled. I avoided his gaze and walked back in first. I'm not offering tea. But if what you really want is an explanation, then fine, sit. My small apartment smelled faintly of lavender and pine, simple, calm. Andrew sat down across from the dining table, stiff like he was bracing for a verdict. I placed a thick folder in front of him, then took my seat, folding my hands. I'm not calling this a family talk. Because I'm not sure we're still a family. But I want you to understand clearly, this isn't some emotional outburst. It's a conclusion. Andrew glanced at the stack of papers and frowned. What is this? Every single expense I've covered over the past 10 years for Mom, for Dad, for you. For the house, the car, the credit cards, the parties, the tuition, the insurance. Some of it I sent immediately, just because Mom said it was urgent. Some of it I wasn't even asked about, it was just assumed. I pointed to the final number on the last page. $478,920. Andrew said nothing. His fists clenched. I'm not complaining, I'm not asking for anything back, but if today I'm being called cruel just because I stopped then, at the very least, you should know how long I kept quiet. You're blaming Mom and Dad? Andrew's voice tightened. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just acknowledging what happened. Every time I tried to connect, I was ignored. Every time I offered help, I got labeled. She's strong. She can handle herself. I wasn't included in family photos, no one asked about my job, no one congratulated me when I graduated, no one came to the launch of my company. But when it came time for the golden wedding anniversary, I still sent the money. Because I thought, maybe this time would be different. I leaned back in my chair. And, in return, I was escorted out by security like a stranger. While my name was missing from the guest list despite being the main sponsor. Andrew lowered his head. I couldn't tell if it was shame or simply avoidance. There was a time, I said softly, when I thought you were the only one who still understood me. Andrew let out a dry laugh, his voice cracking. You're successful, Alisa. You don't need anyone. You don't need validation from that house anymore. No, I cut in. That's where you're wrong. I needed it desperately. I longed to see Mom nod in approval, to feel Dad's hand on my shoulder, to hear you say, you did great. But I've grown up, Andrew. And I've realized if I keep reaching out to people who never reach back, that's no longer love, that's self-destruction. Andrew stared at me for a long time. Then he finally spoke, his voice no longer angry, but tired. Mom and Dad aren't bad people. I never said they were, I nodded. They're just not the kind of people I can keep sacrificing myself for. I stood, walked over to the bookshelf, and pulled out a small box. Inside were letters I never sent, photos I printed that no one asked for, greeting cards I bought to mail, and never did. I placed the box gently on the table. I don't hate my family, Andrew. But I also can't keep hurting myself just to hold onto a blood tie they let go of long before I did. I paused, then added slow, but certain. I didn't choose revenge, I simply chose to stop. Andrew said nothing more. We sat there, two people born of the same blood, now like strangers finalizing the terms of a long overdue negotiation. At last, I gestured toward the door. Not to push him out, but to close the moment. Go home now, Mom and Dad probably need you. And me. I need a quiet night. Andrew stood, still silent. At the door, he turned back one last time. There was something fractured in his gaze, but nothing left to say. The door closed. There was no sound of a lock turning, but I knew a much deeper door had already shut long ago. And for the first time I could breathe. Fully, freely. 1 year after being turned away at the golden anniversary of my own parents, I stood in a conference hall in San Francisco, in front of nearly 300 people, mostly women, at a seminar called Financial Freedom, Emotional Freedom. I wore a simple white blazer, no flashy jewelry, no dramatic music. But the eyes watching me glowed, not because of what I wore, but because we all shared something. Invisible wounds left by family, emotional debts with no names, and the exhaustion of carrying everything just to be seen as enough. I told my story not with tears, not as a tragedy. I simply said, there was a day I was pulled away by security from the entrance of my own parents' anniversary party. Just weeks before that, I was the one who paid for it. The room went quiet. I heard deep breaths. I saw hands tightening around laps. I looked at them, one by one, and smiled gently. From that moment on, I started truly living. My company, Havenworth, now has over 30 employees, operating in 3 states. We focus on financial literacy and empowerment for women who've experienced financial control in family relationships by husbands, parents, even children. Twice a week, I hold free mentoring sessions for small groups. No one needs to prove they've suffered enough to get help. I ask one question. Have you ever felt like you didn't have the right to the money you earned? And almost every hand goes up. My life now is quiet. There are no more phones ringing nonstop. No more emails from banks about auto payments for other people. No more family parties where I'm invited only to stand outside the frame. I never answered another call from my family. Not a single message, either. I didn't hate them, I just let go. But then, one day, while editing slides for a strategic planning session, I received an email. Cinder Carol Miller. Subject. No subject. Body. We were wrong about you. Just 5 words. No direct apology, no explanation, no persuasion, no promises. Just 5 words, standing alone in an empty message box. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't feel anger, no tears, no nervous flutter. Only one thing stirred, quietly, closure. I didn't reply. I didn't need them to admit that I was worthy. Because I had already been living like someone who is an entire year now without anyone having to grant me a title, without anyone saying, I'm proud of you, without the presence of people who had always been absent in my most important moments. Forgiveness wasn't something I did for them. I forgave. Because every step I take forward can't carry the weight of old rage. Because I no longer want to see my life through the wound they left behind. Because I've spent enough of it trying to be enough for others now, I choose to be enough for myself. That evening, I walked along the edge of Pacific Heights. The city was lit up, the salty wind tangled through my hair, and the sky was so clear I could see the moon's reflection tilting gently on the water. I pulled out my phone and opened an old photo of me, in a black dress, standing outside that wedding hall, my eyes still bright but my chest aching. Then I compared it to a photo taken last week, me standing in the middle of my company's meeting room, surrounded by women I had helped. They were hugging me, crying, laughing, grateful. And me. I was smiling, without the shadow behind my eyes. I saved both photos. I didn't delete the past, but I also didn't let it lead the way. On my desk, I placed a small wooden sign. I don't need to be chosen anymore. I choose myself. And from that moment, everything truly began to bloom. Quietly. Without applause. Without needing to prove anything. Just a victory in silence. But deep enough to pull me out of a life spent being forgotten. I once believed that devotion was how I proved I deserved to be loved. That if I tried hard enough, gave enough, endured enough, someday, they would look at me with pride. But the truth is, I don't have to sacrifice myself to the point of emptiness just to be acknowledged by someone. I only needed to learn how to love myself enough to know when to let go, when to walk away, and when to stop, just to protect my own heart. If you've ever been called ungrateful simply for refusing to be your family's bottomless wallet, if you've ever been labeled selfish just because you chose to live for yourself, if you've ever been quietly pushed aside even after trying your hardest to stay, then know this, you are not alone. We may be born into a place, but that doesn't mean we have to stay imprisoned there forever. Family, without love and respect, becomes nothing more than a chain, not a home. And you have the right to choose again where your heart truly belongs. Even if that place doesn't share your bloodline, if it offers gentleness, understanding, and never demands your self-erasure just to remain, then that is real family. I didn't make this video to dwell on pain. I made it to speak to anyone standing on the edge between keep enduring and dare to walk away. You are not wrong for loving. But you are never obligated to destroy yourself just to hold onto a one-sided relationship. So if you're watching this video from anywhere in the world, I want to invite you to share. Where are you right now? Have you ever experienced this feeling? Do you have a story you've never dared to tell because you were afraid of being called ungrateful, disrespectful, or selfish? Write it down. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be perfect. It only needs to be honest. Because sometimes, just knowing someone hears you, someone understands you, that alone can begin the healing. And if you're in the middle of that journey, the journey of choosing yourself, know this: you don't need anyone's permission to be happy. You only need the courage to begin. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, leave a comment, share this video with someone who needs to hear it too, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep walking this healing journey together and become the bravest version of ourselves. Because sometimes, the bravest journey is the one you dare to take alone.